Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and I'm joined today by Chaz. How you doing today, Chaz?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited. Thanks for having me back.
I'm super excited too. This is always one of my favorite times of the year. We just got a new Magic set. This time around it's Aether Revolt, and Chaz and I, for the next several days, are going to be talking about our top 5 rares and mythics from each color. This set is really off the charts, I believe, as far as power level and combos, and I'm really excited to start brewing with it. Anyway, today we are going to jump into it with the black cards, and speaking of super powerful, Chaz, our black mythic, Herald of
Yeah.
Anguish. So is this one of those super broken cards that is going to unthrone or dethrone Emrakul from the top of Standard?
Well, I don't know if it's going to dethrone Emrakul, but I think at some point Herald will have its time to shine. And it's just an inherently, you're getting a lot of power and toughness for conceivably not that much cost. So it does have improvise. If you can find a way, I'm thinking Tezzeret the Schemer. You can create these Lotus Petal or Ethereum cells. You can tap them, then sacrifice them, and that can power out a Herald pretty quickly. I mean, if you can get this down on turn 5 conceivably, then this is pretty good value.
The big thing with Herald of Anguish is it's really dependent on having artifacts. In a non-artifact deck, it's completely unplayable. It's just not big enough for 7 mana. On the other hand, when you consider that if you have 5 artifacts, it's 2 mana, that's insane. That's a great price. That's like Tombstalker, for example, or even a Tassiger, that ability to cheat on the mana cost. But even if you can have maybe 3 or 4 artifacts and you're paying 4 mana, 5 mana, it's a pretty reasonable and powerful creature. So I think that it's limited in the number of decks it'll go in because you really need to be able to cheapen it with improvise to make it worthwhile. But in the right deck, this card can be very strong.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, and not to directly compare them, but we saw a couple powerful demons, Desecration Demon, and this kind of not the same again, but while it's out, it gives you card advantage by having your opponents discard. You can remove creatures on their side of the board by sacrificing artifacts. And again, I think this just really plays well with the blue-black version of Tezzeret. So in the Kaladesh version, the Schemer, where you just have a couple of extra Ethereum cells laying around and you put them to really good use. And for now, at least, until rotation, you have clue tokens, and maybe you don't need to draw any extra cards and you need to remove threats. You can use them to do that.
Well, let's move on from our Black Mythic to talk about another card with one of the kind of namesake mechanics of Kaladesh, and that is energy. So one thing Wizards likes to do is print variants on Dark Confidant. Unfortunately, almost every single bad Bob they've printed has been really bad. Is Glint Sleeve Siphoner better than the bad Bobs we've seen that mimic Dark Confidant?
I think it's a little bit better, only because Menace, right? Has to have Menace on there. I do think it's a little bit better, only because I think just energy has just been so pushed, and it's so powerful and so easy to have so much energy that you don't really even need the Glint Sieve Siphoner to generate its own energy. There's so many efficient ways to generate energy that it could be a very good mimic of Dark Confidant.
Yeah, I think this one is better, potentially, than the other bad Bobs they've printed, and they've printed a lot of them recently, so I think it's a notch above most of those. But my main concern with this card is black hasn't really been the color of energy in Standard. So by itself, Glint Sieve Siphoner isn't really enough. You really need energy support. You might draw, I guess, one card with Glint Sieve Siphoner if you don't have any other energy support. So my big concern is, are we going to have black-based energy decks? If we do have black-based energy decks, This seems like a really powerful 2-drop. If you're really drawing an extra card every turn for 2 energy, we see people that willingly pay 2 energy a turn for Lathnu Helion to keep it alive, and drawing a card every turn is potentially way more powerful than just having a 4/4. So I think if we have black-based energy decks, this is very good. Still not 100% sure we will have black-based energy decks, though.
Yeah, it would have to be paired with another color. Green comes to mind. You have a turn 1 attuned with the Aether. You already have the 2 energy, plus the energy the Glint Sieve Siphoner gives you. I mean, you're already off to a good start. You have the Puzzle Knot. There's plenty of ways to get energy outside of black. But you're right. It remains to be seen if black can be the centerpiece of an energy deck.
Speaking of things that are important to Kaladesh, we have a creature type that is very Kaladeshian. Aetherborn Rogue. This is the Aetherborn Lord, Midnight Entourage. So, do you think there are enough pieces to go full-on Aetherborn tribal, Chaz?
Unfortunately, no. I don't think so. Although, you do have access to some of the colorless cards, like the Metallic Mimic, a card that we'll talk about later. But for anyone that loves like building around casual tribal cards, I mean, this is great. And I don't even know if you need to build around Aetherborn just to make this card good. I mean, it replaces itself. You have a couple of decent Aetherborn in the Syndicate Trafficker. You have Yahenni, which we will talk about in a minute. So there's a couple of things there. You don't have to go full-on Aetherborn tribal, I don't think.
I guess that's true, although I'm pretty skeptical. In a world of cards like Kalidas at the same mana cost that you would choose Midnight Entourage over that. So as far as standard is concerned, for me, I think this one is a really sweet casual card. One thing I've realized is people really like the Aetherborn. It's a really popular creature type, so I wouldn't be at all surprised to see people building casual decks that can take advantage of the handful of Aetherborn we do have from Kaladesh, and also maybe some shapeshifters, some clone effects, things like that, and you could make a really fun casual Aetherborn deck. As far as standard, my guess is this one's left on the sideboard. It just looks so bad to me compared to Kalidas, but you never know. I could be surprised. If Midnight Entourage is going to do some work in standard, it will probably involve our next black card, Yahenni Undying Partisan, our legendary Aetherborn vampire. So what about this one, Chaz? Is this a good enough standalone card that you will just see playing it in a deck?
I think so. I was a little skeptical at first, but there are some really good early on drops. Like, you can even look at the Servo Expedition in white. There's a lot of ways to get multiple creatures or artifact creatures out on the battlefield before you play Yahenni. And this just seems great after you play Sram's Expertise, a card we will talk about in the future. And it just really feels like everything the design of the entire Kaladesh block, artifacts and dropping the specific cards like Sram Expertise, you can play a 3-drop, like all of that seems to be playing around and finding that synergy to utilize these abilities. And I think Yahenni does a great job with that.
So I'm excited about this card because, as silly as it sounds, Nantucket Husk, which is essentially what Yahenni is, except in legendary form. A little bit of difference, but it's 3 mana 2/2 that allows you to sack creatures for free. And Nantucket Husk was a legitimate standard staple not that long ago. We still have Zulaport Cutthroat in the format. Not to mention, we have Marionette Master, which performs a similar role if you sack artifacts. So I'm really excited. I know when Kaladesh came out, one thing we talked about, and it hasn't really took off yet. We've seen a little with White Black Fabricate, but some sort of aristocrat style artifact based deck. And Yahenni could be the card that pushes that up a tier in the format. And it wouldn't be that hard to play a bunch of removal, kill your opponent's stuff, and have this be a 3/3, 4/4, 5/5 that is indestructible whenever you need it to be and can really dominate the ground as far as the battlefield is concerned. So I think this card will be really good. I'm not exactly sure where it fits, but it has my brewer's juices flowing as far as some sort of aristocrats type strategy, because it does look like Nantucket Tuckle Husk, and that was a huge loss for aristocrats when that rotated.
Yeah, the free sacrifice ability is really relevant. Unfortunately, unlike Nantuko Husk, again, this relies on your opponent's creatures dying rather than you controlling how big this gets. Like Nantuko Husk obviously doesn't have haste, but the trade-off was it got +2/+2. But like you said, it can gain indestructibility pretty easily with all these little like servo expeditions and what have you, metallic mimic, animation module. That all seems to play into this aristocrats type list that I would personally love to.
Well, what's better than a Yahenni, Chaz? How about casting Yahenni for free with the help of Yahenni's expertise? So, what do you think about this one as far as standard is concerned? Is this a main deck card, or is this more of a sideboard answer to red-white vehicles or whatever white X humans that are playing a bunch of small creatures?
I think it can be played main deck. Obviously, it's not going to look so great when you're playing against Emrakul, but they do play a couple of small creatures like Servant of the Conduit that this does take care of, and you get a tempo swing. So playing a Yahenni's expertise and then playing like a Grim Flayer for free is pretty good. I mean, that's in and of itself worth playing. Unfortunately, it doesn't play with Yahenni because the creatures are already dead, and then Yahenni gets played, so it's like, But so it's a little bit of a non-bow there, but I think on its surface, even just without playing with Yahenni, it's a really solid card.
So
Pretty good removal for standard, for sure.
yeah, as far as removal, it's really interesting. -3/-3 is a pretty unique effect. It's smaller than Languish, so you're not going to get the full Wrath effect. It doesn't hit Kalitas, for example, but it hits a lot of stuff. It doesn't get Ishkana, but it sweeps away all the tokens. But it does get significantly more than Flaying Tendrils, which is only -2/-2, which doesn't hit Sylvan Advocates, Reflector Mage, Spell Queller. So I'm going to be really interested to see just how good those numbers are, because we see a lot of 2 damage or -2/-2, and then 4 damage or legitimate like full-on Wrath, but -3/-3 is a really kind of unique number for the card. So I'm going to be curious to see what that actually looks like in the format. I know I looked at it a while ago when this card was first spoiled, and it killed a lot of the important cards in Standard. Then, obviously bad against Emrakul decks, like you said, or relatively bad, but against a lot of decks, it is pretty close to a Wrath. How much that'll change with the Aether Revolt cards coming into the format, I'm not 100% sure. Another question, though, Chaz, what are you looking to drop into play with this? Is there a specific target with the getting to cast something, convert mana cost 3 or less for free? Is there, like, something specific that you want to put into play there, or is that just like value, whatever you happen to have in your hand?
Well, I think if you want to live the dream, I think Yahenni's expertise, you play. We talked about this on the podcast actually when it was first revealed, and like you said, we've come a long way from there. But I mean, it still does hit all the relevant creatures. I mean, like you said, 3 is kind of this lucky number where you get Spell Queller, you get all this stuff. But it also seems pretty good as a follow-up if you're holding this back against an Avacyn, and you could play Yahenni's expertise and then drop a Liliana to finish off an Avacyn or something like that. So that would be a really good play. My personal favorite would be to drop a Liliana the Last Hope after Yahenni's expertise, because that just seems awesome. But even like a Grim Flayer, anything at that point is just pure value, and it's just a huge tempo swing for already powerful decks like Green-Black Delirium.
So one more question for you, Jazz. Any modern potential here, or is 4 mana just too much? I mean, discounting some sort of combo, of course you can cheat Beck Call into play to draw a bunch of cards, Boom Bust, all those weird tricks, but can this see play outside of a niche combo in Modern, or is it just not enough negatives for its mana cost?
I think it could be a role player, but I don't know if there's any insane combo potential. Like we always say on the podcast, in a format where Simian Spirit Guide is still available, anything is possible. But even like you look at a deck like Jund, you can Yahenni's expertise, you kill stuff like Wild Nikado, you kill stuff like Curd Ape, you kill a lot of the merfolk even before they have all these lords. And then you could just drop something like a Liliana of the Veil or something like that. And that's just a great play right there. So is it going to redefine Modern or be a super staple in every Jund deck going forward? Maybe not, but I think it's at least worthy of being a role player.
And there might be an argument that it could see play alongside Ancestral Visions. That's another pretty sweet one, at least in some matchups,
Yes.
where you can sweep away a bunch of your opponent's stuff and follow it up by drawing 3 cards, getting your own Ancestral Recall for free. That seems like a powerful combo, so it could maybe show up as a sweeper, a sideboard option in decks that are already playing Ancestral Visions. Maybe a Grixis control list, a Esper control list, some stuff like that.
Yeah, and you look at some of the flashback cards like Snapcaster Mage and Jace Finn's Prodigy. That seems really great when you can utilize it not once but again later on in the game, and you're just getting again this massive tempo swing. It plays a little bit better with Jace because it doesn't remove the Jace. But if it really needed it in a pinch, you can Snapcaster Mage and wipe the board and then get another card to kind of put you back into the game. And like you said, like Ancestral Visions, this just gives another boon to that card that you can play it for free and not have to suspend it.
Well, Chaz, that's been our top 5 black cards from Aether Revolt. So, like we do every time, do you have a favorite of the bunch?
I think it has to be Midnight Entourage, and I know I'm going to steal Richard's thunder on the podcast, but I mean, it just seems sweet. It's just one of those cards that it's just awesome to play, even if you're not playing full-on Aetherborn Tribal, but if you are, it's even better, and I just love cards that it just can replace itself, and it's just all around cool. And I love the art.
Well, I'm going to go with Yahani himself, or itself, because I love me some Nantucket Husk, and Aristocrats type decks are some of my favorite type decks to play, so I'm excited about the potential in the card, just as a free sacrifice outlet. So I think I'm going to go with that one, but overall, I think Black got some really cool cards.
Had some really good power level in the uncommons. I know we didn't talk about it, but even Fatal Push, I'm sure everyone knows, it will be a defining card in multiple formats. So I think in that that in and of itself is a success.
We're only talking rares and mythics, but if we were going to rank the black cards as far as the best out of the entire set, I'm pretty sure that Fatal Push would be number 1. Maybe not even just for black cards, but maybe the entire set, period. That's how high I am on that card. Anyway, everyone, that's been our top 5 black cards from Aether Revolt. So, Chaz, thanks so much for joining me, and we will be back tomorrow to talk about some more Aether Revolt. So, until then, we will talk to you soon.
Take care, everyone.